Welcome back. It is day 70 of our 90-day New Testament reading plan with New Life Youth. My name is Christian. Thank you for joining me today. Today's reading, Hebrews 6 through Hebrews 8. So let's get right to it. This section of Hebrews pretty much completely deals with this priest and king named Melchizedek and this comparison of him and Jesus. And Melchizedek, we really don't know much about. We know that he shows up in Genesis 14 for a few verses, kind of deals with Abraham with a few things. And then the author of Hebrews also really just recounts that history that shows up in Genesis. But outside of that, we really don't know anything about Melchizedek. There's kind of one more mention in the Psalms. I think it's in Psalm 100 that there is something alluded to there a little bit. But outside of that, we really have nothing about Melchizedek. But this idea of priests and Melchizedek and Jesus as a high priest, let's just kind of explore what that means for these Jewish Christians in this audience. So the priest is an important job in the Old Testament, and especially with the original covenant between God and his people. So the priest, like we've said before, he was someone who would intercede on behalf of the people, between the people and God, and they would offer sacrifices for the forgiveness of sins. But the priests, they had come from a tribe of Levi, or come from the tribe of Levi. But the priests were still an imperfect people, like they're humans still. But even if you think about the first priest, who was Aaron, so the first priest of Israel, which is Moses' brother, right? After he becomes priest, what does he do? Like, what's his first act? Moses goes up to Mount Sinai, and under the pressure of the people, because Moses is taking too long in their opinion, Aaron builds a golden calf for them to worship, right? This is his first act as priest. And so all that to say that the priests were still human, like they were still imperfect, even as they were, dealing with sins for other people, they were dealing with their sins as well. And so they were imperfect people. But prior to all of this, prior to those priests of Levi, prior to Aaron, we have this other priest on the scene from not a part of Israel, before really Israel is even established, of course. Melchizedek was a Canaanite, and he was the king of Salem or Jerusalem, and he was the priest to the one true God. We see that he was the priest to the one true God. But there is really no genealogy. There's no beginning of his days. There's no end of life for Melchizedek. This is almost just like a strong parallel to Jesus. So Jesus is the great high priest, not from the line of Levi. He came from the line of Judah, and the line of Levi, of course, in an imperfect priesthood. And Jesus is the great high priest who would remain forever. So a little bit of parallel there, right? And so Jesus, now it says he is in the order of Melchizedek. Well, what does that actually mean? Because I think we can go, oh, well, he must be in the lineage, like some kind of lineage to Melchizedek. And it's not about lineage or ancestry. This is just about these similarities in priesthood. So Melchizedek's priesthood was unique in this way that he was a priest before the law. He was a priest before Levitical priesthood. He was king and priest, which was actually not allowed under the law. You couldn't be both the priest and king. And Melchizedek appears to be timeless. Like, it talks about no genealogy, no record of birth or death. Jesus's priesthood is similar to Melchizedek's. That's what the order of Melchizedek is talking about. So Jesus wasn't a priest by birthright. He was from Judah, not Levi. But Jesus is both king and priest. So Jesus's priesthood is forever. And Jesus was anointed not by the law, but by God's oath. That's in Psalm 110. I think Psalm 110 is where it talks about Melchizedek. I was mistaken. Sorry about that. Jesus's priesthood then is divine appointment. It's about divine appointment. It's eternal. It's perfect. Like, it's superior to all of the Old Testament priesthood. So even Melchizedek, we assume that he was just a man, that he, so it's not that he was timeless or eternal. Some people get this idea that even possibly Melchizedek could have been like some kind of incarnation of Jesus or something along those lines. But the reality is, like, we believe that Melchizedek was just a human individual. And so Jesus is timeless. Jesus is eternal, far superior beyond any of these other high priests who have ever come before. So as the authors write into this Christian audience, they are getting this great understanding of how Jesus is superior as a high priest. They are gaining this understanding, like, I don't need to go to someone else. I don't need to pray to someone else. I don't need to, even as we think of Catholicism, like I don't need to pray to a saint to mediate on my behalf. Jesus is far superior to anyone who has come before, and he will remain superior because he isn't going anywhere. He is eternal. Not only as a high priest, and this leads into tomorrow's discussion too, but not only as a high priest, but in this new covenant, Jesus is superior as well. The author says he sacrificed for their sins once for all when he offered himself. Like other high priests offered sacrifices, but Jesus offered himself, the perfect sacrifice. The other priests were offering other sacrifices. Jesus offered himself as the perfect sacrifice. In Hebrews 8:6, it says, but the ministry Jesus has received is as superior to theirs as the covenant of which he is mediator is superior to the old one, and it is founded on better promises. This mediator is one of a new covenant. And as a mediator, Jesus is guaranteeing that the covenant promises are fulfilled. He's not just going back and forth between two parties, but he is guaranteeing that this covenant is going to be fulfilled through him. That is what he is doing as our mediator. Like the promised deliverance is actually going to be accomplished through Jesus. So Jesus is seeing it through. He is the one fulfilling it, unlike the old covenant. And this is why this new covenant is far superior. The old covenant was reliant upon the people to follow through. And humanity is messed up, right? If you just even turn on the news for 5 seconds, you see humanity is messed up. We make mistakes. We fall short. The difference between the old covenant and the new covenant is that people had to follow through, and mankind is flawed. Now, Jesus in this new covenant is the one who is upholding and fulfilling the promise. And that's why this new covenant is so much more superior than the old covenant ever could be. It's because we rely on Jesus. So Jesus is the superior high priest and the reason this new covenant works. The new covenant is under, what's that weird? The new covenant is under grace and faith, not under works. And so this would have spoken volumes to this Jewish Christian audience who was still very focused, I'm sure, on works and justification by works. For us, we understand, like yesterday, Jesus gave us direct access to God as our high priest. Like he was the perfect sacrifice that is enough, and we don't have to continue making sacrifices anymore. Jesus understands our struggles. Jesus is interceding for us still, and he's still acting as our mediator, seeing that this promise of the new covenant is going to be fulfilled in our lives as we follow him and put our faith in him and give our lives to him. And out of this, now we live our lives differently. Like that is always the call. We live our lives differently now, because in 1 Peter, what we see is that we are called to live as a royal priesthood, that we are holy, that we are set apart. Like our lives should reflect Christ's holiness, his love and his service to others. And now we fight the temptation, like these Jewish believers did, to fall into the old ways of religion, tradition, and of our own works. And so tomorrow we'll continue that conversation a little bit on this new covenant and Jesus as a sacrifice and being a mediator. But for today, that really wraps up our conversation. So let us know, what are some takeaways from your time in the Word today? You can let us know here on YouTube. Let us know in the YouVersion Bible Clan. And of course, we hope to see you tomorrow.